Okay, welcome to the Hooligans League Mark IV Award Ceremony and Distinction. I'm League Commissioner Gabe Puckett. I'll be presenting my presentation on awards and distinction within the league today. We're pretty much going to do it basically how we've done it the past couple years. The only other version that's on YouTube to be viewable by anyone in the world, including the 16 people that actually have watched it, is our third mark of last year. Second mark was created but was presented to the league in person. Mark 1 was not created due to the fact that there were only 4 teams in that league, and I do not count those statistics towards the winner statistics of the league. Even though I won, that's not like a championship that I count. Either way, let's go ahead and get into it. So, acknowledgement of our mascot. If you haven't been here before, may I introduce you to Kyle? Oh yeah, I gave Kyle like a very big intro last couple years. I wanted to kind of do it a little bit late this time. Just kidding. There he is, and there he goes. Whoa, he's gone. Oh, he's coming back. There he is. Oh, he's gone. Oh, there he is again. All right. Okay, so a new thing for the award ceremony this year. I want to reintroduce the teams. All 12 teams this year. 2 more than last year. Decided to boost it up a little bit. So Joe Buck yourself. That's our good old buddy Jin. He's been in the league for 3 years. He was previously known as the Brady Bunch before Tom Brady decided to retire and he lost all meaning of life. So his highest finish was in 2021. He finished in 3rd place. I count highest finishes, and you'll see why in just a minute, highest finishes as past finishes. So this year's statistics don't get spoiled in the meantime. And the color code basically means if you see some player or the team associated with that team, then you're going to see that color kind of bolded around that team's name. So his team, Joe Buck yourself, will be bolded and colored in red. That's his color code. Lafayette Hill Hammerheads, Sean Gallagher, he was one of our 4 founding members. His highest finish was last year. He finished in 1st place, and his color code is orange. Devontae's Demons, a new member in our league, Tyler, his color code is gray. Albuquerque Alcoholics, that would be me. I'm the league commissioner. I was one of the 4 founding members, previously known as Richmond Ravenclaws and Bluefield Bobcats. I just like to change my name every year. And my highest finish was 2nd place, thanks Najee Harris. Color code for me is purple. Raw Dogs, that's our good buddy Eddie. He is a new member this year, and his color code is magenta. That doesn't really look like magenta, but apparently Google thinks so. Comeback Season, previously known as He Akin' Me and Stop Beating Me Please. That's our good buddy Derek. He is a second-year member in our league, and his highest finish is 10th, which was dead last year. And his color code will be forest green. Teddy Roosevelt, one of the new members in our league, that's Natalie. Her color code is indigo. Average Joe's, that's good buddy Joey. It's his 2nd year of membership. Last year he finished as the runner-up, and his color code is pink. Rodney Kings, that's Dylan, his 3rd year of membership. His highest finish was a couple of years ago. He finished in 5th place, and his color code is black. And then Make It Hurts, that is Matt Jones, his 3rd year of membership. His highest finish was a couple of years ago, right behind Dylan, in 6th place. His color code is maroon. Baltimore Beefcakes, that is Tyler Murphy, his 3rd year of membership, so he's been around since pretty much everyone else. His highest finish was last year. He finished in 3rd place, and his color code is blue. And then X Gonna Give It to You, or I'm sorry, X Gon' Give It to Ya. I'm sorry. Rest in peace, DMX. That's good buddy Ryan. He was one of the 4 founding members along with me, Sean, and Taylor, who is no longer a member in our league, formerly known as 2 Girls, 1 Cup and CDC Guidelines. His highest finish was 8th place, back-to-back years, and his color code is teal. All right, season distinctions. So, the team with the most points for, which is the highest scoring team, and just so you know, it'll pull it up whenever it's, oh, hello. Let's try this again. Team with the most points for is the highest scoring. It'll pop up if it's only counting the regular season. So for most of these statistics, it will be that case. So team with the most points for, that's Teddy Roosevelt with 1,802.08 points scored. Team with the least points for, so the lowest scoring, was Comeback Season with 1,379.56 points. Team with the least points against, So that's the lucky break. So that means the points scored against them by other teams was the lowest. And that would be Teddy Roosevelt with 1,456.3 points against. And team with the most points against. So the no luck team, that's X gon' give it to you. That's Ryan with 1,686.14 points against. So let this not be an excuse, as second place was Joe Buck Yourself, who was 1,680.8 points against and was a finalist for our league championship this year. Not to spoil anything, but yeah. Most valuable player. So this basically signifies the highest scoring player of any position in our league this season. This doesn't have to mean anyone who was voted upon on the league. This is just the highest scoring fantasy football player in our league, and this should be no surprise. Running back Christian McCaffrey, drafted by Joe Buck Yourself. He was drafted pick 6 as the third running back off the board behind Eckler at 3 and Bijan Robinson at 5 due to my dumbass. He scored 378.2 total points in the regular season specifically. He only had 4 games below 20 points, and his lowest was 13.1 against the Washington Commanders in championship week. He had 7 games with 100-plus rushing yards and only 2 games with less than 50. And he had 21 total touchdowns on the season, only 3 games without a touchdown. And I can't remember how many he went in a row, but I know it was a lot. And I know it made a lot of people a lot of money on FanDuel. I was not one of them. He had 1,459 rushing yards, and he had the most of the season. He had 15 rushing touchdowns this year, which was third, only behind Raheem Mostert and Jalen Hurts. Least valuable player. So this signifies the player who was projected to be among the best, but was instead among the worst while playing. So this is mainly an opinion-based thing by me. Last year I gave it to Cam Akers. This year was Austin Eckler. As much as it pains me, a Chargers running back drafted by X gon' give it to you. He was drafted 3rd overall to be a top-tier running back 1. He only scored 169.5 total points in 13 games played, which is probably more than most people expected him to play. He only had 1 touchdown from weeks 1 to 8, and that was against the Dolphins in week 1, a very close game, 36-34 loss. 4 touchdowns in 3 games from weeks 8 to 10, and then he had 1 touchdown for the rest of the season, so he decided to hop out of hibernation for all of 2 seconds and then go back in. He only eclipsed 100 rushing yards once, and that was in week 1 against the Dolphins. Again, a loss. His highest fantasy points total in a week was 26.4 against, you guessed it, the Miami Dolphins. He eclipsed 20 points 5 times, and 3 of those times were from weeks 8 to 10, where he came out of hibernation. The most lopsided victory this year in our fantasy league, only counting regular season. Thanks, Ryan. Week 13 matchup between Rodney Kings and Joe Buck Yourself. So let's cover the losing side first. Joe Buck Yourself, you scored 101.52. Not bad. Fields, Josh Dobbs, Josh Jacobs, and Cole Kmet were all on bye, so that didn't really help the situation. He only had 1 player above 17 points, and that was Christian McCaffrey. No shock, he had 22.3. Miami's defense and Matt Gay both combined for 28 points, which is really good. Special teams is really kicking it in the ass. Terry McLaurin had a season low, 0 points. You got it. Tyler Algier, who scored 2.6, Keenan Allen 10.8, Brandon Ayuk 15.6, Pat Bryant 5.9, and Terry McLaurin 0 combined were outscored by Deebo Samuel. Not great. And by the way, Rodney Kings beat you with the score of 197.14, a victory margin of 95.62 fantasy points. 5 players scored above 25 fantasy points. Deebo Samuel, the aforementioned, of course, had a season-high 35.8 fantasy points. Jamar Chase had a season second high, so he had 1 game higher than this, 31.62 fantasy points. Joe Mixon had a season-high 29.7 fantasy points. Michael Pittman Jr. had a season-high 27.5 points. So basically, it was the best week of Dylan's life, pretty much. Only players under 10 points in the starting lineup was Zach Moss, who had 7.7, and Jake Moody, who had 6. The closest game of the fantasy season, only counting the regular season, of course, was Week 3 matchup between Joe Buck Yourself and Devontae's Demons. Joe Buck Yourself, again, we're covering the losing side here, which is insane, scored 131.48. A very strong total. He started Josh Kelly, who scored 2.7, over Isaiah Pacheco with 15.8, Terry McLaurin with 10.1, and Elijah Moore with 11.8. Dallas's defense scored a season low, I believe, or maybe just a little bit higher than low. -2 points. Not very good for there. Keenan Allen, on the other hand, had a season high 45.46 fantasy points. And all but 4 total players scored in double digits. So Cole Kmet, Josh Kelly, Dallas' defense, and Josh Reynolds, specifically Josh Reynolds was benched. All 4 of them did not score in double digits. Devontae's Demons scored 131.82, which is a victory margin of 0.34. He started Najee Harris with 6.5 points over Brian Robinson with 7, and James Conner with 19.6. Cortland Sutton, which is mistyped, 19.6 fantasy points, and Rondale Moore with 16.2 fantasy points were both benched. Josh Allen, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and Zach Moss all combined for 93.62 fantasy points. The biggest upset of the year. So this can count anything from any week at all. But this won't include any matchups. Oh, yeah. Well, I forgot to delete that, but the Bengals game was last year, so you don't have to worry about that part. It includes any matchups from any week. The semifinal playoff matchup between number 1 ranked Teddy Roosevelt and number 5 ranked Average Joes. Teddy Roosevelt scored 109.42. Highest score was CeeDee Lamb with 25.2 fantasy points. James Cook decided to score a season-low 5 fantasy points in clutch time. All players except for Lamb were outscored by Baker Mayfield with 19.82 and Chigozie Okonkwo with 18.3, both on the bench. The only other loss for Teddy Roosevelt this season was to Joe Buck Yourself in the regular season. Number 5 Average Joes moved on to the championship, scoring 114.02, a victory margin of only 4.6. Devontae Adams had a season-low 1.4 points, but that's okay because Ezekiel Elliott had a season second-high 21 fantasy points for the New England Patriots. Lamar Jackson and Zay Flowers combined for a tandem duo 44.78 fantasy points, both on the bench. But both bench defenses, Atlanta and New England, combined for 30 points. Mike Evans, David Njoku, and Cooper Kupp, however, all combined for 64.9 points. The best trade of the season. Best and worst trade are usually opinion by me. That's not voted upon. So, it signifies the trade that had the best effect for one team or one that worked out well for both teams. October 4th. 4:27 p.m., a trade came through the league where Baltimore Beefcakes traded running back Jahmyr Gibbs to comeback season for running back Breece Hall. This didn't really help their standing, but both of them decided to explode after the trade. Gibbs was finally given the reins of Detroit's rushing attack, and despite a rough week against the Saints where he only scored 6.4 points, he came back, became a premier back, and he netted the 8th spot on the running back rankings for the season. I think with the score corrections, he ended up dropping to 10th, but either way, still a top 10 fantasy running back, a guy you want on your team. On the other end, much like Gibbs, Breece finally found his stride, and he was one of the only reliable weapons in a lowly Jets offense, of course, besides Garrett Wilson. He had some weeks of mediocrity, but that was okay because he came back on with a newly refurbished pass-catching running back style. A style that he adapted a little bit last year before his injury, but he came back and he expanded it a little bit, and he adapted to the offense that he was given. He rewarded Tyler with the 4th spot on the running back rankings for the season. Good Lord. Wow. 4th spot. Worst trade, on the other hand. It signifies a trade that was extremely detrimental to one team or one that generally had a negative effect on both teams. I'm sure when you view this trade, you'll understand why I selected it. October 3rd, 11:30 a.m. There weren't many trades this year, but one of them was very interesting. Teddy Roosevelt trading Gabe Davis away to Baltimore Beefcakes for Luke Musgrave. In the time, it could be understood why it happened. But after the trade took place, Luke Musgrave completely faded and became completely useless. He was put on season-ending IR after Week 11 and finished 29th among tight ends, which you would know is not really good for tight ends at all. Gabe Davis, on the other hand, was a big roller coaster after this trade. After Week 8, Davis scored above 20 points just twice while scoring 0 points 4 times. His inconsistencies made him an unreliable weapon for the Bills and for Tyler, and he finished at the 40 spot for wide receivers. Not good. The best regular season record, Teddy Roosevelt, who finished 13-1, the lone loss to Joe Buck Yourself in the regular season. The worst regular season record, good old tie. Comeback season, Derek Robinson and Baltimore Beefcakes, Tyler Murphy, both finished with records of 4-10. The longest winning streak of the season was Teddy Roosevelt, who won 11 games in a row, defeated by Joe Buck Yourself in Week 12 by just about 10 points or so. The longest losing streak, this isn't a shock, comeback season, lost 8 games in a row from weeks 1 to 8 until finally defeating Baltimore Beefcakes in Week 9 by just about, I'd say, looking at it, 22 points. The most consecutive weeks in first place, I really had to do some deep digging. Just kidding. It was Teddy Roosevelt, who was in first place from weeks 2 to 14, which was the end of the season. Finished 13-1, only losing in week 12 to good old TB12, which is not, I believe that's the still the insignia for Joe Buck Yourself, even though Tom Brady is long retired. Maintained first place in week 2 by points 4, and was third to Devontae's Demons and Joe Buck Yourself in week 1 due to points 4. And I think they pretty much had first place until they were knocked out by Average Joe's in the playoffs. Most consecutive weeks in last place. Had to do some deep digging for this. Just kidding. Comeback season. Derek Robinson in last place for weeks 2 to 10. Took last place from Megan Hurts in week 2 due to I believe it was points 4 or maybe a record. I can't remember what exactly it was, but I know that they were in last place. And then lost last place in week 10 to X Gon Give It To You in week 11. And finished the season 4-10, which was tied for last. Best performance by a team in a single week. So this is on a single week, no matter how close the game was. So obviously, best performance by a team is going to be the highest amount of points. And of course, it's going to result in a win, because if it was the highest amount of points and they lost, then it wasn't the highest amount of points. Rodney Kings in Week 13. Good old pal Dylan scored 197.14 to defeat Joe Buck Yourself. And if you remember correctly, that was on the level of the highest, the biggest lopsided victory. So it's pretty much going to say the same exact thing that I put, because I copied and pasted it. So we've been over this story. Season highs and second highs for 4 of his players. 5 players scoring above 25 fantasy points, and only players under 10 were Zach Moss and Jake Moody. Best performance by a single player in any week, and this player has to be starting. You'll understand why in just a second once we get to the next award. But the best performance by a single starting player was Week 5 when Jamar Chase of the Cincinnati Bengals put on a show. 15 receptions for 192 receiving yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Cincinnati beat Arizona 34-20, and Dylan defeated Matt 115 to 90.26. Jamar Chase decided to make up the majority of those points with 52.2 fantasy points. The best performance by a bench player this season. So this player had to have been benched, and obviously it wouldn't have affected the outcome of the matchup, and it doesn't matter whether the team lost or won. It just matters how the player finished. Week 3, Devon Achane, Miami Dolphins. He had 18 rushes for 203 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 4 receptions, my apologies, for 30 receiving yards and 2 receiving touchdowns. And if you're a true football fan, you remember correctly, the Miami Dolphins absolutely walloped the Broncos 70-20. And good old Raw Dogs defeated myself 96.58 to 92.1. Devon Achane was on my team. He scored 51.3 fantasy points on the bench, which was a career high and a breakout performance. All of 6 of my position players, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and flex, combined for 52.8, which is only 1.5 more points than Achane, which means that Achane probably won the most least valuable player for Week 3, if I'm not mistaken. I'd be dead on shocked if he didn't, and pretty much screwed my record for the rest of the season. Not really. Most consistent lineup. So, for context, this signifies the team who kept the most players that they originally drafted. So, this is a 3-way tie. All 3 of these teams have 11 players remaining from this draft. And the way we're going to go over it is the same way we did last year. We're going to go over the players that they didn't keep, just to make it simple. So, X going to give it to you. Ryan Poyester-Pearson did not keep Mark Andrews due to trade, Mike Williams due to injury, Daniel Jones, Chase Claypool, and John Mechie III. Devontae's Demons, Tyler Zemeska, did not keep Rondale Moore, Daniel Carlson, the Bengals defense, Kenny Pickett, or Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And Raw Dogs, Eddie Weinberger, did not keep Pat Freiermuth due to trade, Cam Akers, the Saints defense, Gerald Everett, or Curtis Samuel. The least consistent lineup. The exact opposite. The team that kept the least amount of players they originally drafted. This was a tie, a two-way tie with only 6 players remaining from the draft. We're going to do the exact opposite. We're going to name the players they kept. Baltimore Beefcakes, Tyler Murphy, kept Travis Kelce, Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, George Pickens, DeAndre Swift, and Jordan Addison. And comeback season, Derek Robinson kept Devontae Smith, Jonathan Taylor, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Odell Beckham Jr., and Russell Wilson. The most free agency transactions. Now, I don't know how many of you noticed, but due to last year's motions, we did put a cap on the amount of players that you could add from free agency. So my 49 players added last year that don't happen this year. The cap you could have had was 30 most transactions. So the most transactions was Baltimore Beefcakes, who claimed 28 players off of free agency, which was too short of the league limit. Notable players include Rashee Rice, Jordan Love, who was dropped and re-added, and Luke Musgrave, who was eventually traded to Natalie for Gabriel Davis. And the least free agency transactions was Raw Dogs, who only claimed 5 players. That's it. The only acquisitions that were remaining on their team were Logan Thomas, the Texans defense, and the Giants defense. 2 defenses. Interesting. Now for the poll questions. So this was poll questions that were sent out via survey to the other league members. So besides the motions, the league commissioner, which is me, did not vote in any of these unless in the event of a first place tie. If there was a tie for any other places, I did not vote. I made sure to account for all ties in this poll. So, forewarning, some of these don't make any sense, but that's okay because it's completely opinion-based, so here we go. Who was the best quarterback this season? 4th place was a tie, a 2-way tie, 1 vote per piece. So, 4th place receiving 1 vote, Joe Flacco of the Browns, who was undrafted, added by Jin, and finished on waivers. Yeah, best quarterback material. And Tua Tagovailoa also received a vote, drafted in round 7, pick 83 by Natalie. 3rd place was Jalen Hurts. He received 2 votes. Was drafted by Eddie in round 1, pick 12. 2nd place, Lamar Jackson received 3 votes. Drafted by Joey in round 4, pick 41. And finally, 1st place was Josh Allen with 4 votes. He was drafted by Tyler Zemeska in round 4, pick 39. Just 2 picks before Lamar Jackson. The best running back this season. Let's go ahead and zoom out here because this was a unanimous 11-vote player. First unanimous vote since a couple of years ago. 1st place, Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers was drafted round 1, pick 6 by Jin. The best wide receiver this season. 3rd place was a 2-way tie for 1 vote per piece. Keenan Allen of the Los Angeles Chargers received a vote. He was drafted by Jin in round 3, pick 30. And Nico Collins of the Houston Texans, drafted by Joe, round 12, pick 137, and finished on Derek's team. 2nd place was also a 2-way tie, 2 votes apiece. CeeDee Lamb of the Dallas Cowboys, who was drafted by Natalie in round 1, pick 11, and Puka Nacua of the Los Angeles Rams, who was undrafted but then added by Sean early in the season. 1st place, of course, 5 votes for Tyreek Hill, the Miami Dolphins, the best wide receiver this season, drafted by Tyler Zemeska, round 1, pick 10. The best tight end this season. 4th place, Cole Kmet of the Chicago Bears, receiving 1 vote, drafted by Jin in round 8, pick 91. 3rd place was Travis Kelce. He received 2 votes this season, drafted by Tyler Murphy in round 1, pick 7. 2nd place was TJ Hawkinson, the Minnesota Vikings, drafted in round 4, pick 46 by Ryan with 3 votes. And somebody else that Ryan drafted finished 1st place, and that would be good old Sam Laporta with 5 votes. The rookie tight end for the Lions finishing 1st this season, drafted in round 16, which is the very last round, pick 190 by Ryan. The best kicker this season. Oh, Lord. The tie for 1st was actually broken by me. This one's not as bad as the defense. We'll get there. Third place was Justin Tucker, only receiving 1 vote this season, and is drafted by Ryan in round 11, pick 123. Second place was Jake Elliott of the Philadelphia Eagles with 5 votes, drafted by Eddie in round 11, pick 132. And finally, first place with 5 votes plus my league commissioner vote, Brandon Aubrey, a Dallas Cowboys kicker for a second year in a row, taking on the legacy of Brett Maher, who won this award last year, went undrafted but finished on Joey's team. The best defense special teams this season. Third place was a 4-way tie with 1 vote apiece. Detroit Lions defense and special teams was undrafted and added by Derek and finished on waivers. Miami Dolphins defense received 1 vote, was drafted by myself in round 10, pick 116, and I believe finished somewhere else. Yes, Jin picked him up. Cleveland Browns defense got 1 vote, was drafted by Ryan in round 13, pick 147, and the New York Jets defense got a vote, was also drafted by Ryan in round 10, pick 118. Second place was a 2-way tie with 2 votes apiece. Dallas Cowboys received a couple of votes. They were drafted by Jin in round 10, pick 115. If you can't see really well, sorry about that. San Francisco 49ers defense also received 2 votes. They were drafted by Dylan in round 8, pick 93. And now time for first place, which is going to be right down here with 3 votes. Baltimore Ravens defense, which was undrafted and added by me and finished on Joe's team. Good job, myself, for dropping the best defense in the league. Now, the best draft pick this season. This is completely opinion-based. Third place was another 4-way tie, 1 vote apiece. My apologies. Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams. Like I said, opinion-based. Drafted by Derek in round 1, that's incorrect. It should be pick 1, not pick 2. Justin Jefferson was pick 2, and he was drafted by Nat Jones. 1 vote for Josh Allen, drafted by Tyler in round 4, pick 39, and a vote for Raheem Mostert, drafted by Natalie, round 14, pick 158. Second place was CeeDee Lamb, receiving 3 votes from the Dallas Cowboys, drafted by Natalie in round 1, pick 11, and the best draft pick this season, according to multiple votes. 4 votes for Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers, drafted by Jen in round 1, pick 6. Who was the worst draft pick this season? Well, you definitely had some opinions, League. 8-way tie for second place. I'm coughing beforehand because I have to go through 8 players who received 1 vote apiece. So let's go ahead and go through them at top speed. Dak Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys was drafted by Derek, round 13, pick 145, and finished on Joe's team. Rashad Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens was drafted by Natalie in round 15, pick 179, and finished on waivers. Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams was drafted by Derek in round 1, pick 1, and finished on Joe's team. T. Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals was drafted by Matt in round 2, pick 23, and finished on Ryan's team. Najee Harris of the Pittsburgh Steelers was drafted by Tyler Zemeska in round 3, pick 34. Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos was drafted by Tyler Murphy in round 5, pick 55. Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings was drafted by Matt Jones in round 1, pick 2. And finally, the Miami Dolphins defense was drafted by myself in round 10, pick 116. So that was second place. Bet you're wondering what first place was? No, you're not. It is our good pal Austin Eckler. The Los Angeles Chargers received 3 votes, including what would have been myself if I had to break this tie. He was drafted by Ryan, round 1, pick not 1. He was drafted 3rd. Sorry about that. Okay, so the biggest draft steal of the season, the new award. This wasn't here last year. Really had to do some digging if you were to understand what the steal was here. Because I had my own personal opinions. It would have been Sam Laporta, considering I think he was drafted 3 picks before the end of the draft. But most people didn't see it that way. But when you go back and look at first place, you understand why, because it's still a late pick. Here we go. Second place was a 6-way tie. We're going to roll through these as fast as humanly possible. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the Detroit Lions, was drafted by Sean in round 2, pick 16. Tyreek Hill, the Miami Dolphins, was drafted by Tyler Zemeska in round 1, pick 10. Not sure that's a steal, but okay. Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints was drafted by Matt Jones, round 3, pick 26. Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons was drafted by Tyler, round 6, pick 63. Jalen Hurts was drafted by Eddie, round 1, pick 12. Again, not a steal, but that's okay. Sam Laporta, who I thought should have gotten it, was drafted by Ryan, round 16, pick 190. And first place was 4 votes for Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins, who was drafted by Natalie in round 14, pick 158. So still really late, really worthy of this award. And who had the most well-rounded team? So you're voting for who you believe had the best team for the majority of the regular and postseason. And you cannot vote for yourself. That's the only caveat of this, because otherwise we'd have another 8-way tie. Joe Buck yourself received 3rd place with 1 vote. 2nd place was Average Joe's with 3 votes. And 1st place with the rest of the votes, 7 votes for Teddy Roosevelt, who finished 13-1 and was the league's most powerful force. Who had the best team name? This is always one of the more fun awards, so I'm going to kind of drag this one out just a little bit. Can't vote for yourself. 3rd place was a 4-way tie with 1 vote apiece. So one person really liked each of these team names. X Gon Give It To Ya by Ryan. Devontae's Demons by Tyler Zemeska. Albuquerque Alcoholics by myself. And Average Joe's by Joey Caulfield. Okay, now for 2nd place. Teddy Roosevelt, who received 3 votes. And of course, 1st place, having received it in a previous year for his former team name, the Brady Bunch, Joe Buck yourself. Jin receiving 4 votes. Now, for the final league standings. If you are tuning in from Dylan and Avery's house and you have just clicked on this video to go through the standings because you don't want to take up too much time in your day, I understand. This is where you start. This is where the official award ceremony, or lack thereof, begins. So, 12th place in our league and the SAT taker. Comeback season, Derek Robinson, last place for a 2nd year in a row. 11th place, the almost SAT taker, was 2nd to last. X Gon Give It To You, Ryan Poyester Pearson, who is probably sweating up until the last minute of the league. 10th place, who was They Tried. That would be Baltimore Beefcakes, Tyler Murphy, receiving 10th place this year and the 3rd pick in next year's draft. 9th place, the consolation bracket MVP. Good job to Raw Dogs, Eddie Weinberger, who did his absolute best to avoid league punishment, and good job. 8th place, a pleasure to have in class. That would be Devontae's Demons, Tyler Zemeska, receiving 8th place in our league. 7th place, almost top half of the league. Good job to myself, Albuquerque Alcoholics. Not my year. I don't know why, but that's okay. 6th place, so almost bottom half, but hey, stuck in the top half. Make It Hurts, Matt Jones. 5th place, now in the top 5, the comfortable passing grade. So we're talking about, let's say, a B-. A B- for this team. Lafayette Hammerheads, Sean Gallagher, last year's champion, handing the ball over to someone else this year. I wonder who it is. 4th place, the podium cleaner, Rodney King's Dylan Bustler, with his strongest performance of his time in this league. Now, for the podium. 3rd place, and our bronze medal, the participation trophy of the podium. I'm sorry I don't have these medals in person for you, but that's okay, because you get a lot of pride. Teddy Roosevelt, Natalie. Probably should have won the league, but that's okay. Moving on. 2nd place, the silver medal, and the almost undisputed champion. Again, no medal. A little bit of chunk of change, but that could help. So, 2nd place, Joe Buck yourself. Jin, almost getting it this year. That title evades you, my friend. Now, finally, 1st place, and the gold medal, and the undisputed champion of Hooligans League. If you've got the trophy right there, get ready to take off the cover in 3, 2, 1 for the champion, Average Joe's. Joey winning his championship. It evaded him last year due to DeMar Hamlin, but he came back from the dead, no pun intended, just kidding, to get it this year. So, just for a rundown of all the league standings, if you could see it, if you're just looking on YouTube, just for fun, that's how we finished this year. And now for the important part of this for league members. You don't have to stick around if you're not a league member, but if you want to know what's going on and you're in the league, or you're not, you just want to see what's going on with the league next year, stick around for the league motions. So, Motion 1 was a request to enact a restriction of player acquisition by a team who is out of playoffs and last place running. So basically what this means, it was brought forth by a manager who is concerned over free agency acquisitions by a team who will not receive first to third place but will also avoid last place. So let's say we're in the second round of the playoffs and there is a team that is already out of the running for the top 3 spots, which are the money-winning spots, and also can't get last place. This motion would pass forth a restriction of that team adding some of the top players in free agency and taking them away from teams that do actually need it. So this motion is tied by a vote of 6-6. So what's going to happen in the event of a tie? This motion will be sent to a revote with a 3-day timestamp via survey to all members of the league. In the event of a second tie, a coin flip that will be recorded live will decide the motion. And if you do not vote within that 3-day timestamp, your vote is invalid, and you will not be counted towards the second vote. Motion 2, the request to keep the buy-in amount at $20 for the upcoming season. And this motion was brought forth by me. This is a absolute motion. This will come about every year to re-gauge how we should see the league buy-in, just to get it over with and understand what we should push for next year. So this verdict is passed by a vote of 9-3. So the buy-in will remain at $20 for the upcoming league year, with the same award amounts for teams that finished first to third, and this motion will renew every season. Motion 3, the request to lower the playoff team pool from 8 teams to 6 teams. This motion was brought forth by a manager who expressed concern over the amount of teams in playoffs compared to the amount of teams fighting to avoid league punishment. A valid motion nonetheless. So this verdict passed by a vote of 7-5. So what's going to happen is the playoff pool will officially be lowered to 6 teams, with 6 teams vying for the championship and the other 6 in the consolation bracket avoiding last place. Details on the bracket will be discussed at a later date when I am able to get all the statistics worked out and be able to put it into the system to make sure it doesn't screw us up in the midseason. Motion 4, request to add a second flex spot to each team's roster for the upcoming season. So this was brought forth by a manager that was looking to add an extra spot for added production and point total on a weekly basis. So this verdict passed by a vote of 7-5. So what will happen now is the second flex position will be added to each team for the upcoming season. This flex spot will play the same role as the original flex spot. It will result in 1 extra round of the upcoming fantasy draft to accommodate for the new position, and it can support a running back, wide receiver, or tight end. We're not taking away any positions with this verdict. We're just adding one. And the last motion, which is motion 5, the request to eliminate the kicker position. This was brought forth by me. It was recommended by online sources, so I decided to put it up for vote, and it was struck down, defeated by a vote of 2-10. All kicker spots will remain on rosters and kickers will be drafted as normal. This motion will not be brought forth again unless a manager expresses concern. So, looking forward to next season, the fantasy draft will be held after the majority of the rookies have signed their rookie contracts as usual for their new teams, most likely sometime in the preseason. And this will not change by season. The draft will be held in reverse order of the final standings of this season, including the playoffs. In the event that new teams replace non-returning members in this league, they will automatically receive picks at the end of the draft order. If multiple new teams enter the league, the order of those teams will be decided by random draw, and that will be streamed live. The new playoff format will be drafted with a 16 pool and be relayed to all league members before the new season begins. So before the fantasy draft, before any buy-ins come in, before anything. This should not change what draft strategy you go with. A survey for the revote of motion 1 will be sent out soon. It should be completed in 3 days upon the point it is sent out, not upon the point it's created. So I'll make sure to keep track of that. If it's not completed in 3 days, your vote will be deemed invalid. I'm sorry about that. And if this league does switch to a different platform, specifically Sleeper, this is a question that I've posed to all league members. If it does in fact switch to sleeper, all members will be notified of this before the switch is made, just in case some members aren't comfortable with it and would like to remove themselves from the league. That is in the case of that happening. So, and to be safe, that league has already been created. I'm not inviting anyone yet. I just made sure to get all the specifics together, make sure to get it the way the league is currently set up. I'll make changes, obviously, from these motions and everything like that, but I wanted to make sure it was there and want to make sure that the process of changing would go smoothly in the event that it actually happens. So don't be alarmed. It's not happening yet. In the event that we don't switch to sleeper, we'll just stick to ESPN, make it easy for everyone, and everyone will kind of stay the way it is. So yeah, big thanks to our mascot again, good old Kyle, doing a flip right there, and he goes out, and goodbye. Thank you for joining us. Oh, there's Kyle again. All right. Thank you so much for joining Mark 4 of the awards ceremony and recognition for the Hooligans League. We'll see you next year.